Welcome to Learn More. In the previous lesson, we learned about the branches of psychology, and we looked at developmental psychology. We looked at the meaning of counseling psychology. We also learned about clinical psychology, social psychology. We learned about psychometrics, educational psychology, cognitive psychology, comparative psychology, environmental psychology, physiological psychology. We also looked at applied psychology and industrial psychology. Now, the branches of psychology that was explained was splitted into two parts, where we took the first six and explained the first six in the first part. Then we went further and we had another lesson where we explained the last six in the other part. So, having fully understood these 12 branches of psychology, we are moving further to the next topic, which is educational psychology. So, like I said before, we have briefly looked at educational psychology, but now we are looking at it in detail. We are looking at it so that we can understand every aspect of educational psychology, and it's now a topic on its own. So the objective of this lesson is to learn about educational psychology and the scope of educational psychology. So we want to learn about educational psychology, we want to learn about the scope of educational psychology. So what is educational psychology? At least if I ask you what is educational psychology now, you could be able to tell me what educational psychology is. At least, even if you can't quote the definition verbatim, you can say, okay, educational psychology is a branch of psychology that applies the principle of psychology in solving educational problems. So you can also say educational psychology try to understand and solve problems within the learning environment between the learners, problem that arises in education. So that is what educational psychology is all about. So let's look at the definition of educational psychology. Educational psychology is the application of the principles of general psychology to the problems of education in order to suggest possible solution. Now, the aim and objective of educational psychology is to be applied to problems in education and to also provide solutions to the problems in education. So let's not get this wrong. Educational psychology would always want to provide solution to an existing problem in education. Educational psychology inquires whether man's nature is modified by the environmental forces operating on the process of learning. So, in educational psychology also, we want to know if the process of learning changes the habit of man, changes the perception of man, changes the idea, the thinking, the motivation of man. We want to know when people go to school, when people are involved in the education setting, is there any significant difference in their life before that time? And let's say probably when the person is still in school and you now graduated, could there be any difference between someone that just graduated now and somebody that is just entering into the higher institution? So we are trying to understand in educational psychology, we try to inquire whether there is a change in the nature of the man, there is a change in the model of the man, which is caused by a change into another environment, which is also caused by learning. Educational psychology is used to solve problems relating to teaching and learning. I said this before, it's used to solve problems. It provides solutions to problems in teaching and learning. It directs the general principle of psychology in solving educational problems. We have so much problem in education. and educational psychology is trying to provide solutions to them so that education can be done appropriately. So we have looked at educational psychology. So whatever problem that comes up, that arises in education, can be solved by educational psychology. So problem of motivation, problem of intelligence quotient, problem of reading, writing, problem of motivation. Okay, I've said motivation before. Problem of IQ, so the problem of the method and the ways of teaching. You know, there are so many problems that educational psychology tends to provide solution for us. So let's look at the scope of educational psychology. The scope of educational psychology are the major areas which educational psychology covers. Now, the scope of educational psychology are the major areas which educational psychology cover. The major areas that educational psychology covers. The scope of educational psychology involves human growth and development. Human growth and development. Now, in human growth and development, we are trying to understand the growth and developmental process of humans. The growth and developmental process of humans, and how humans grow from conception to birth to childhood, early childhood. You have adulthood, and so on. So every stage that is involved in the developmental process and growth of a child is being looked into in educational psychology. So in educational psychology, you would be able to understand what to do and how to train a child after birth, the kind of training you are supposed to give to a child when the child is a year old, 2 years old. What are the paramount training that child should have? You know, these are some of the things we learn in educational psychology. Now, under the human growth and development, this human growth and development studies heredity and environment. Heredity and environment. Heredity is the trait and the characteristics that the humans get from their parents, be it from your father or your mother. There are some traits that are exhibited by your parents that directly or indirectly you get, because the gene is the blood that comes together to form this human consists of genes from the father, from the mother, coming together, and there's tendency that you get one or two characteristics from your parents. So we are trying to understand heredity and environment in learning, how heredity could affect a child learning, either positively or negatively, and also how environment could affect the learning process of the child, either positively or negatively. Okay, someone that grew up in the rural area, how the person would not be able to learn as fast as those child that grew up in the urban area. Also, educational psychology studies motivation. I've said motivation before. Motivation is whatever you do that arouse the learning capacity of that child. Whatever you do to arouse learning, whatever you do to make the child or the student, to make the learners feel more comfortable and active in learning. Motivation. You can say, okay, Sandra just gave an answer to the question. Let's give Sandra a clap. So everyone gives her a clap, one clap. And Sandra is motivated because she answers the question and she answered it very well, and she's been motivated. So that will make her answer more questions. So educational psychology look at motivation. Okay, general growth and development. It looks at individual difference. Individual difference is it's a topic on its own in educational psychology. We'll get to that topic where we'll look at individual difference, but let me give you something you can just use to understand what individual difference is. As human beings are different, so we have different perception of things. For example, individual difference, we have someone that could believe in one thing or the other while the other person do not believe in it. We also have different level of reasoning and calculation, where this person could be able to calculate at a high speed, the other person could not do much calculation, and where this other person could have a very high retentive memory. This other person have to learn and relearn before he could be able to assimilate what is taught. You know, there are different set of individuals in the class. We need to understand this different set of individuals. We need to understand how to also train ourselves so that we could be able to fit. Let's say you are a teacher now, you could be able to fit in passing instruction to these learners. You know that child A learns faster than child B. In a situation like that, and you have so many of those children that falls under the category of child B in your class, what will you do? How will you go about it? So this is where we come to individual difference. So educational psychology also, under human growth and development, it looks into social and emotional development. Then number two, educational psychology, we also have human learning. We have the general nature of learning, factors influencing learning, those factors that influence learning, motivation and devices in teaching. We have skills, we have reasoning and problem solving, transfer of training and learning. We have memory, remembering and forgetting. All these concepts are what you should know in educational psychology. All these concepts are what it's involved in educational psychology. And then number three, we have personality and adjustment. We have this has to do with emotion, mental life of people, mental health of the teacher. We also have character development. We have social interaction. So I just listed some major concepts that are involved in educational psychology. Actually, they are grouped under three categories. So I said number one is human growth and development, then number two, human learning, and number three, personality and adjustment. Now, most of these concepts that I've said, we'll be looking at them one after the other as topics in educational psychology, so you don't have to there's no cause for alarm. Just be fine and follow us as we unleash the topics serially as we unleash them. So for now, we have looked at educational psychology and we looked at the scope of educational psychology. The scope of educational psychology. Don't forget, educational psychology is a branch of psychology that applies the principle of psychology in education. Now, there is a reason why the principle of psychology is being applied to education. It is applied to education in order to solve educational problems. In order to solve educational problems. So, in summary, we have learnt about educational psychology and the scope of educational psychology. In the next lesson, we shall learn about the techniques to educational psychology and factors that affect the learners. Factors that affect the learners. So that's what we'll be looking at in the next lesson. I want to make a call to you out there that you normally get lessons, our videos. You could be of help to one or two people that are out there now and could not access this video. You could share the link to the person. Some people are in need of this and they don't know it's already going on. So I would appeal to you that you send the link to people, send the videos to people, so that your colleagues in school, you know, you have someone that needs this, you know, try and make it up to the person. See you in the next lesson.